Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. On this video, we want to look at the corruption of the Islamic months or the Islamic calendar and why the month of Ramadan should actually begin on September every year and that it doesn't change year by year. It doesn't change from season to season. This is a highly controversial issue, and in fact in some countries such as Iran and Saudi Arabia, you could be killed, you could be executed by the government for just saying what I'm about to say on this video. The truth about the Islamic calendar is that it is neither entirely lunar nor entirely solar like the Western calendar and the pre-Islamic Persian calendar. It's not completely based on the sun, and it's not completely based on the moon. The real Islamic calendar is actually a luni-solar calendar. And I'm not the first person to be revealing this. I've actually heard this before from other people, such as I've heard this from hadith rejectors and some liberal Muslims who I heard this once from an Iranian man who actually wanted to combine Islam with Zoroastrianism. However, I'm probably the first person to explain this using the Quran and Sunnah, and with some common sense during our era, during this generation. I'm probably the first person during our time to be actually following the Quran and Sunnah and believing in the lunisolar calendar at the same time. As I've said many times before, I am a Sunni, but I believe the Sunni schools of thought, the Sunni madhahib, were actually corrupted during the Abbasid dynasty. And remember that the Abbasid dynasty took over the Muslim lands with the help of the crypto-Jewish Shias. And since then, every generation of Muslims have been moving further and further away from the original teachings of Islam. Inshallah, on this video, we will also see the agenda behind the alteration of the Islamic calendar, and that it actually has to do with associating Islam with the moon. To summarize, there is a story narrated in many Islamic books, especially in the tafsir sections, in the tafsir books, in the tafsir of Surah Al-Baqarah. You can find this in many of the tafsir of Surah Al-Baqarah. And it's also mentioned in some hadith books. And the story is that a group of Jews, or I should say Yahudis, made the claim that they are the followers of Mikael or Michael, and that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was following their enemy Jibreel or Gabriel. This story is actually hinted at in Surah Al-Baqarah, in verse 97 of Surah Al-Baqarah, where it says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم قل من كان عدوا لجبريل فإنه نزله على قلبك بإذن الله مصدقا لما بين يديه وهدى وبشرى للمؤمنين. Who is an enemy unto Jibreel? Who dares to be an enemy unto Jibreel? For it was he who revealed the Quran to your heart, confirming that what was before it, and a guidance and a good news to the believers. This ayah is explained in many ahadith and many tafasir to be associated with this story of these Jews who hated Jibreel. They said that they hate Jibreel. They said that Jibreel is the angel of punishment, and that's why they don't like the angel Jibreel, and that Michael is the angel of mercy. Now, but very often you may hear the Jews rejecting this story and claiming that the Muslims made it up, because the Jews claim that they have nothing against Jibreel or Gabriel. And as their proof, as their evidence, they quote the book of Daniel, which is a Jewish book, and in the book of Daniel it says that the angel Gabriel brought down revelations to the prophet. So the Jews say, how could you say that we are against Gabriel when we believe in the prophethood of Daniel? That Daniel the prophet got his revelations from Gabriel, you see. However, what both Muslims and even some well-intentioned Jews need to understand is that, as I've said before, the Yahud are actually the Kabbalist Jews, or the Jewish Illuminati, or the Jewish secret societies. Not just the Illuminati, but the Jewish mystics in general, the Jewish secret societies. And the Kabbalist Jews often reject parts of the Old Testament, or for example, or sometimes they don't admit to rejecting it, but instead they make the excuse that they interpret them metaphorically, similar to many Shia and Sufi sects when they don't want to admit to their secret beliefs. So when you show them an ayah, when you show them a verse from the Quran, they say that, oh, this verse is metaphorical, or this verse is abrogated. That's their excuse, but the truth is that they don't actually believe in those verses from the Quran. And similarly, there are Jews who don't really believe in the scriptures, in their own scriptures, in the Torah, but they make the excuse that it's metaphorical or whatever. As I've said, as I've mentioned before, the Kabbalists actually call themselves Yahudis. And so when you see the term Yahud in the Quran or in the Hadith, it's referring to the Kabbalist Jews. The normal Jews are called Alladhina Hadu. The Kabbalist Jews are called Yahud, and they call themselves Yahud. They don't like to call themselves Jews. They call themselves Yahudi. And so the fact that the top 12 Imami Shia leaders and also the top Batini Sufi leaders, the fact that they also believe in the Kabbalah and try to combine Islam with the Kabbalah, this actually proves that our ummah, that our nation, has actually been hijacked and taken over by Yahudis, as the term Yahud applies to anyone who follows the Kabbalah. Be it the Sufi Rumi, or Erdogan, or Khamenei, or Khatami, or Hassan Rouhani, or the Berelvis, or the fake Naqshbandis. All these people are following the Kabbalah, and therefore that means they are Yahudis. That's the very definition of a Yahudi. In fact, the Yahudis, many of them say that you don't need to believe in the Torah so long as you believe in the Kabbalah. So that's their actual ideology, is the Kabbalah. This is why, despite their differences, they all agree on the lunar calendar, circumcision, and pantheism, or Wahdatul Wujud. All these Sufi and Shia sects, they all agree on these things, and they agree on many things that are clearly not in the Quran, and they actually contradict the Quran. As for any Jew who denies the fact that at least some of the Jews hate the angel Gabriel or Jibreel, where here is an indirect admission from a Kabbalist rabbi. Notice that he will not admit to actually hating Gabriel directly, since Gabriel is praised in Jewish scriptures. But so if a Jew, insults Gabriel, he's in fact insulting the prophet Daniel and insulting the scriptures and the Torah, and and many well-intentioned Jews would realize that these Kabbalists are actually satanic. So that's why these Kabbalist Jews don't outwardly admit to hating Gabriel. But notice that this rabbi, this Kabbalist rabbi, he indirectly hints, he makes a hint if you pay very close attention. So listen carefully to what he's about to say.
You see the virtue or the greatness of Yitzchak, but I see the evilness of Ishmael. You looking at the situation with a good eye, because you're just looking at Yitzchak. I'm not looking at that. I'm looking at the fact that Ishmael is vicious, he's wicked, and he's going to do a lot of bad things to the nations of Israel. Let me tell you what Rabbi Shimon said. Vaya lahu zimna. Oy, oy, oy. Oy, 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 for that time that Ishmael was born. Ishmael v'nimol kedem farish v'azel. Now, so what's the big deal? Why are you so upset that Ishmael was born and that he was circumcised? It's okay, so what's the big deal? Why? Is that a reason to be upset? Okay, now I'm going to explain to you why we have to be upset. Ishmael. Come and see 400 years the superior, the angel that is in charge of Ishmael, is holding control. Zohar just says that the Memuneh, the one that is in charge on the nation of Ishmael, These are the Muslims, by the way, in case you're not following me. 400 years, they're superior. In Takifin Be'alma. And this is written over 2,000 years ago. And in the future, the sons of Ishmael are future to arouse huge wars all over the world. Now what's going to happen? They're going to go against the entire world, the sons of Edom. And they're going to go and gather war against the rest of the world. The sons of Edom, these are the Christians. So all the Muslims, this is a prophecy from over 2,000 years ago. The Muslims are going to go and they're going to infect the rest of the world. Everywhere they're going to go, they're going to cause havoc, they're going to cause riots, they're going to cause wars. They will gather themselves and go to war against everybody. And now they're going to cause a lot of wars with everything they just run into. They're going to cause wars with. The land of Israel will never be given to anybody. This is our land, and nobody can come into the land of Israel to take anything. That's what I've been saying so many times. The most safest place is only Eretz Israel, not anyone else. Now, Hashem will save you. But why the right hand? What's the idea with the right hand? Shehu soda malchut asher tiknu bechesed de'emin. That the right hand is the chesed, coming from kindness. Ve'oraita biyimina. And the Torah is also coming from the right side of the Zeir Anpin. And everything is dependent on the right side. And we learn from that we always have to raise the right hand over the left hand.
You see, this is also why so many Hollywood movies portray Gabriel as being negative or evil, and why the angel Michael or Mikhail is often respected with titles like Saint Michael on the media. But you rarely or maybe never hear them say Saint Gabriel. You see, in fact, we're even used to it. Like, if you hear Michael, like who are you talking about? Who's Michael? Oh, Saint Michael, Saint Michael. But you don't hear them saying Saint Gabriel. they always say Saint Michael, Saint Michael, Saint Michael. But when it comes Gabriel, they just say the angel Gabriel. They don't say Saint Gabriel. So what was their agenda for Islam? Well, I believe their plan was to first corrupt Islam and convince us Muslims that that our religion is based entirely on the moon and on the angel Gabriel. And by the way, the lunar path is also the path of suffering, according to these Kabbalists. So they also wanted us to suffer and to be associated with the night, with darkness, as opposed to the day and sunlight, and make us subliminally or subconsciously desire to integrate the sun into our religion. And of course, the sun is also associated with Freemasonry and Catholicism and many pagan cults, even Scientology. And in recent years, as part of their Shia-Sunni agenda to make the Sunnis accept Shiism and unite with the Shias, in recent years they've also tried to associate the sun with Shiism. Although, as I said before, in the past the Shias were associated with the moon. All Muslims were associated by the moon, but it was the Shias who were doing this, who were using the moon symbol for Islam. But in recent years they've been trying to say that no, the Shias are the sun and the Sunnis are the moon. Anyway, this is the same way, this is similar to the way like they surround one political group or one political party with the color red or with the color blue all the time, and then try to create a desire within them to unite with the opposite color. In other words, not only do they play their political games on the news and on television in order to manipulate us into accepting their ideology, but they also use subliminal messages and symbolism such as the sun and the moon, or the red and the blue, to give us a feeling of imbalance if we refuse to accept the satanic global unity under the Zionist rule. If we refuse to accept their yin-yang path, their yin-yang ideology. They of course also bully and harass us as much as possible and use fake news stories to turn the public against real Muslims. And of course, they also accuse us of being extremists, even though their own books support the very evil practices that they associate with us Muslims, such as murdering children, raping slaves, raping children, and incest. All of these are commanded in their own Talmud, in the Jewish Talmud, and also many other Jewish books, as well as the books of the very liberal Sufis and Shias, whom they portray on the media as being moderates. But it's their own books that say these things. And you know, it's funny because when they quote those books, they say, look at what Muslims believe. This is what Islam believes. And then half an hour later, you see them defending the Sufis. They said, oh, but the Sufis are different. Even though the books they're quoting are actually the Sufi books, and the tafsirs, the interpretations that they're quoting are Sufi tafsirs or Shia tafsirs. And I've seen it many times. I watched the video once, for example, where there was this Jewish person who was spreading propaganda against Islam, and they were saying that, look, Muslims believe that it is okay to have sex with dead bodies, and they quoted a book from a book that was written by Khomeini, by the Shia Khomeini. And then they say, you know, but you know what, the Shias are the good guys because, you know, they helped us invade Iraq, so they're the good guys. Even though Khomeini himself was a Shia. You see, this is how they try to deceive people. So basically, they give us two choices. The version of Islam they partially corrupted a long time ago, especially during the Abbasid era, or the completely fake version of Islam, such as liberal Shiism and Batini Sufism. In other words, they associate the Quran and Sunnah, the original Islam, with moon worship. And then they try to make us feel depressed, grieved, and tired, and frustrated by telling us to waste time performing many different rituals that they added to our religion. And they tell us to do things that are difficult and frustrating, or by telling us to avoid so many different things, by claiming that anything joyful or beautiful is haram, such as art, music, or marrying who you love. And the only way out of this conservative, frustrating path is through liberalism and embracing evil and selling out to the Zionists, or even joining their satanic secret societies and their perverted lifestyle. And for example, this is why, even though the original symbol of Islam was the rainbow, what they do is that they instead try to associate the rainbow with homosexuality. Even though the rainbow is actually the symbol of Islam. The symbol of Islam is not darkness and the moon and the night. The symbol of Islam is the rainbow. And notice that these people, they use the rainbow for two groups of people. If you go and look at children's toys, you see a lot of rainbows associated with children and things that are for children. If you go to children's sections in stores and shops, you see a lot of rainbows. And then, so these children, you know, they have their inclination, the fitra, and they have a natural inclination towards the rainbow. But they don't know that that rainbow that they desire is actually the symbol of Islam. So they instead twisted it around and associated Islam with darkness and ugliness and boredom and frustration, and associated beauty and happiness and love with homosexuality and sodomy, with disgusting things, with lesbianism, with perversion, you know, with transsexuality, with, you know, cutting off someone's private parts. And they say that, oh, that's beautiful, that's love, that's light, that's you know, colorful. Even though that's darkness, that is pure evil, that is disgusting, that is evil. But they twist it around, you see. by the way, this is also why we are also told that wearing gold is haram. Because in Kabbalist Judaism, gold is called the metal of the sun, or the metal of Mikael. In fact, the Prophet himself, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he himself used to wear a gold ring. But we read that Muawiyah, according to Musnad Ahmad, which is one of the oldest hadith books, Muawiyah claimed that gold is haram. And later, when the Abbasids took over and destroyed all the previous hadith books, a hadith all of a sudden appeared that claimed that although the Prophet did used to wear a gold ring, he later forbade it. It was later abrogated, and then it became haram, and then it became like a huge sin to wear a gold ring all of a sudden. However, we must remember that the definition of abrogation in Islam is when an ayah abrogates another ayah. A verse of the Quran has to abrogate another verse of the Quran. This is the definition of abrogation according to the Quran itself in Surah Al-Baqarah. So when you see abrogation mentioned in the hadith, but without any evidence from the Quran at all, that's when you know that such a hadith is fabricated. And the people who fabricated them were making excuses for why the Prophet himself used to allow the very things that they claimed were haram, or vice versa. Because the people back then still remembered the Prophet, or their fathers or their grandfathers remembered the Prophet. So they would say, but we heard that the Prophet used to wear a gold ring. What are you talking about? So they would say, it was abrogated. You see? But we heard that the Prophet himself allowed the drawing of pictures and images, and his own wife used to have dolls that were in the shape of horses. So how come you say that images are haram in Islam? It was abrogated. So while, for example, there is evidence from the Quran, clear evidence from the Quran that the direction of Qibla was changed and abrogated, and that temporary marriage, or nikah al-mut'ah, was abrogated, we find no evidence of gold being abrogated, of the wearing of gold being abrogated. There's no evidence of it. In fact, on the contrary, the Quran clearly warns us about this. Allah actually warns us about people who forbid things such as gold. For example, there is an ayah that says, "A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim." Say, who has forbidden the adornments of Allah which He has brought forth for His servants, and the clean foods? Say, they are for those who believe during the worldly life, and exclusively for them on the day of resurrection. Thus do we detail the verses for a people who know. And it's interesting because many of these people, they claim that if you do certain things in this world, you won't have them in paradise. There are some narrations and some ahadiths that say things like this, like if you listen to music in this world, you won't have it in paradise. If you have gold, or if you wear silk in this world, you won't have it in paradise. But notice that this ayah says that the mu'mineen, they have the beautiful things in this world and in paradise. You see, the people who are going to hell are the people who desire evil things. It's the people who desire ugly things, rubbish things, trashy things, disgusting things. It's not the people who desire good things. So long as you get the good things in the halal way, so long as you're not working for the enemies of Allah, you're not serving the shayateen, you're not a sellout. It's good to have gold if it's halal. If you make money with honest work, it's good to have gold money. It's good to have gold coins. It's good to have beautiful things. You see? And Allah is actually telling us this here in this ayah. It actually says that we will have it both in this world and the next world. So it's not like these people say that, if you have gold in this world, you won't have it in the next world. If you have silk in this world, you won't have it in the next world. You hear this a lot from orthodox groups such as many of the Salafis and conservative Shias. But it's not true. And it's interesting that after the Abbasid era, Many so-called scholars have also forbidden many halal foods, such as lobsters and even prawns. In fact, some Sufis claim that all sea creatures are forbidden except for fish, even though the Quran says that all sea creatures are halal to eat. And those Sufis, they claim that the Quran has been abrogated, even though they have no evidence, not even from the Hadith. And remember that only an ayah can abrogate another ayah. So even if they had a Hadith, then even then that Hadith must be considered as false. But sometimes we see that they don't even have a Hadith, and yet they still claim that it's abrogated. And A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, we don't abrogate an ayah or make it forgotten unless we replace it with a better or equal one. Do you not know that Allah is capable of all things? So it is kufr to say that a hadith is or worse, an opinion of a scholar abrogates the Quran. For only an ayah can abrogate another ayah. Only an ayah which is equal or better can abrogate another ayah. Hadith or opinions of scholars can never abrogate the Quran. And it says, do you not know that Allah is capable of all things? Meaning that if Allah wanted to abrogate an ayah, why would he leave it to conjecture and opinions instead of revealing an ayah that clearly says that it is haram to do such and such? But instead today every scholar has their own list of things that they claim were abrogated, and they differ with each other over which hadith abrogates which ayah. However, if Allah really wanted to abrogate the Quran, Allah would have revealed a new revelation, just as he abrogated the Torah and the Injil through the Quran. If Allah wants to abrogate something, he would abrogate it. He doesn't need your help. Allah doesn't need the help of the Shia Maraji Taqlid or the Malikis or the Shafi'is or anyone else. If Allah wants to abrogate something, he will abrogate it. Do you think that the hands of Allah are tied like the Yahudis? Like the Yahudis, the Quran says that the Yahud say that the hands of Allah are tied. In other words, Allah needs our help. No, if Allah wants to say something is abrogated, he would have said it. There are 6,236 verses in the Quran. So why wouldn't Allah just have revealed an ayah saying that it's abrogated? Another such example is a hadith that says it is forbidden to wear beautiful clothes, and another hadith that says that the Prophet used to wear clothes with patterns on them, and the patterns once distracted him from his salah. So afterwards he forbade it. He forbade the wearing of clothes that have patterns on them. It was abrogated. Not only are these ahadiths false and fabricated, not only are they made up lies, as they contradict the Quran, but they are also in fact disrespecting the Prophet by accusing him of being distracted during his salah just because there were patterns on his clothes. This is why some Muslims today think that they must wear plain clothes with no patterns on them. Remember that I am not a hadith rejecter. I do believe in those ahadiths that agree with the Quran, and those ahadiths that do not contradict the Quran, that fit in with the message of the Quran, or the Quran, as however you want to pronounce it. Such as this hadith from Sahih Muslim. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu narrated that the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "No one will enter paradise who has an atom's weight of pride in his heart." A man said, "What if a man likes his clothes to look good and his shoes to look good?" He said, "Allah is beautiful and loves beauty. Pride means denying the truth and looking down on people." So as you can see, not all the ahadith are false, But many people like to jump from one extreme to the other. They either want to reject all the hadith, or they become a hadith rejecter, or they want to follow a hadith that contradict the book of Allah. So we have the original sunnah, where we see that the Prophet allowed music during joyful occasions and only forbade music that causes grief, such as playing sad music at graveyards. And in the original sunnah, the Prophet also allowed toys that have faces on them, contrary to some hadiths that claim that it is forbidden to make any images, especially those with faces. And we know such narrations are Jewish because the Quran says that Jesus, or Isa alayhi salam, made images of birds. Isa was an artist. You see, Isa alayhi salam was an artist. So when you see a hadith attacking artists, they are in fact attacking Jesus, or Isa alayhi salam, and also Sulaiman alayhi salam, who also built statues according to the Quran. And it's interesting that the Jews claim that Sulaiman alayhi salam became a kafir, he became a pagan. And the Quran says that he didn't in verse 102 of Surah Al-Baqarah. In verse 102 of Surah Al-Baqarah, the Quran actually says that Sulaiman didn't become a kafir. You know why the Quran says that? Because the Jews say that he did. And so they try to attack Jesus and Solomon by claiming that anyone who makes an image will go to hell. So they inserted these false ahadiths into Islam so that we would be indirectly insulting Jesus and Solomon. Because when we say that anyone who makes an image will go to hell, we're actually saying that Isa and Solomon will go to hell. And that's what the Jews believe. The Jews believe that Isa and Solomon will go to hell. So you see, the original Islam was a very joyful and beautiful religion. You see, it wasn't like the liberal perverts. The Quran never allows things like homosexuality or abortion, but clean and beautiful things were always allowed, such as making images, so long as they weren't idols, playing joyful music, wearing beautiful clothes, and wearing precious metals, including gold. In fact, on future videos, I will inshallah show that they also took out the name of Mikael from the Salah, from the prayer. And today, we hardly ever hear the angel Mikael being mentioned in any Islamic rituals or speeches or prayers. However, in the original Salah, both Jibreel and Mikael were mentioned together. In the original Salah, we used to say Assalamu ala Allah, Assalamu ala Jibreel, Assalamu ala Mikael. But inshallah, I will explain that on another video. In fact, we have very few ahadith or narrations that even mention Mikael in most of the famous hadith books, such as Bukhari and Muslim, and even in the Sunan Sittah in general, the 6 most famous hadith books, the books that are approved by the so-called scholars. If you want to read about the angel Mikael, you need to read books that weren't approved by the Abbasid kingdom, such as Musnad Ahmad and Mustadrak al-Hakim.